Well, hello there guys and welcome to another one of my reviews. Today we are changing the scenario a bit, the way we're doing things. As you probably could already tell, I'm not in front of the camera, but I'm trying to show you this car from my point of view. Why? Because this is a very interesting car and a very exciting car to drive, as you're about to see. You already figured out that this is the new Mercedes-Benz SL, and since this is the new generation model, we are talking only about AMG versions. The SL is no longer available without an AMG version, sort of speak. So the range starts with the SL63 AMG, it goes up to the SL55, and then you arrive at this one. This is the big daddy. This is the top of the range model. This is the SL63 AMG, the most powerful and the fastest model in the range, even though it shares its engine, most of it, with its SL55 brother. What we're talking about is a 4-liter twin-turbo V8 under the hood with a hot V configuration, so the turbochargers are inside the engine's V block, if you will, and this one makes 585 horsepower and 800 Newton meters of torque, whereas the SL55 makes 467 horsepower. So yeah, this is the biggest, meanest model. But before we get to the technical side of things and we actually drive it, I just wanted to show you just how beautiful it is. This car is dressed up in the Patagonia red color, so it really stands out. This is a Mercedes-Benz manufacturer color, so it's part of the manufacturer catalog, and it costs about 1800 euros extra. Up front we have the Panamericana grille that's already a established trademark of AMG models, and I love the daytime running lights of the new AMG models, including the SL, or maybe I should say especially on the SL. These headlamps have the digital light function, which is optional, and the digital light function comes as part of the premium package. That's about 4,000 euros. Okay, so we have the 21-inch wheels on this car. They are optional as well, about 1,500 euros, and the V8 bi-turbo 4MATIC inscription over here. I love the whole design of the thing. It looks brilliant in the back as well, rounded shapes. It looks very beefy though, and it's really beautiful. We have the AMG and SL63 logos on there. There's a spoiler over here that actually lifts at over 80 kilometers an hour, and it has 4 positions it can sit in order to improve downforce on the rear axle depending on the speed you are going at. Of course, the quad tailpipes of the AMG models are still present, and we also have a trunk, of course, boot. It's not huge. This is a convertible after all. It only has about 240 liters of space at maximum. When you fold the roof, you go down to 213. Now, Mercedes says that this is actually a 4-seater, but before we get inside the car and talk about that, let's see how the roof movement operates. Mercedes says that this should take about 15 seconds and that you should do it at speeds up to 60 kilometers an hour. But from my calculations, it takes a bit more than 15 seconds to put the roof up. And what's annoying is the fact that if you take it down, let's take it down. If you take it down, the whole process involves raising the windows back up, no matter if you had them down to begin with or up to begin with. So whatever you want to do, whatever position they were in, the end of the movement will leave them up, such as this. We have flush door handles when the car is locked, and of course, as I said, Mercedes-Benz says this is a 2+2 car, so we've seen this trick done before by various car makers. I don't think any humans can fit in the back. Now, this is not my comfortable driving position. The seat has been moved a bit forward, and there's almost no room left. And not to mention that if you want this wind deflector up, you cannot fit humans over here. So the rear seats will most likely be used for storing stuff, and that's useful because you don't have a lot of storage spaces in this car. It could be worse, I'm gonna give you that, but this is definitely not the most spacious interior I've ever seen. For a sort of 2+2 Roadster Cabrio model, it's pretty good. I mean, I had the Z4 before this car, and that was a disaster in terms of storage space. So the door bins are decent. You do get 2 cup holders over here, and of course a wireless charging pod, and a rather decent center console as well. You also have a refrigerated glove compartment as well. As I said, the driver's seat wasn't in my comfortable driving position. Let's see if I can get it in that position now. This is my comfortable driving position, and this is what the interior looks like whenever you get inside the SL63. Let's start the engine up. So this is what it looks like. It does use the modern day Mercedes design. So this screen over here is the same as the one found on the new S-Class, but it does have a couple of tricks up its sleeve. It still uses the MBUX system, so it's the same you've seen on a number of modern day Mercedes-Benz models, but it does have the AMG menu over here, which shows various information about the car, also about the engine, and also about the fuel consumption. But you also have this AMG button over here, which allows you to configure the driving modes. You have a button over here on the steering wheel which allows you to scroll through different driving modes, including an individual driving mode and a slippery driving mode for those rainy or winter snowy days. And I like the fact that you can configure all of them, but I don't like the fact that if, for example, so I have a button over here on the left side of the steering wheel, which actually there are 2 buttons over here, which you can assign a function to. So right now I have the top button assigned to opening up the exhaust flaps, and the bottom one for the AMG dynamics bit of the car. Okay, so I don't like the fact that if you decide to open up the flaps inside the exhaust, whenever you turn off the engine, the option deactivates. Now, before this car, I had the M3 Touring, and that also had a button for the exhaust, and that stayed on no matter what you did with the car. So yeah, I would have preferred it that way, but it's not a huge issue. You can just add this button over here. Also, you can, as I said, you can select any other option over here. For example, for the rear spoiler to be activated by using this button. I don't know if you can see it in the rear view mirror, it went up. Or you can activate, I don't know, engine data. Whenever you press on this button, you get teleported to this menu, or I don't know, anything you can think of. 3D view to show you the surroundings and so on. I prefer it this way. Let me just show you. I prefer to have the option of turning on the exhaust because this engine sounds just so good. Let's see if we can make it purr. Oh yeah, oh yeah. Okay, so this is basically just a Mercedes-Benz MBUX layout, but I said this screen has a couple of tricks up its sleeve, and I'm talking about the fact that you can actually adjust its display angle. So Mercedes thought that during some summer days you could have the sun hitting this screen at a certain angle, and it would be so strong that this screen might become a sort of mirror, if you will. So that's why you can actually adjust the angle of the screen. Now, the one issue I have with this car, and the one issue I had to deal with the most during my time with it, was the way the folding rooftop works. So instead of using a traditional button, mechanical button, or old school button, whatever you want to call it, Mercedes decided to integrate it like this. So basically, If you want to open or close the soft top, you have to slide your finger on this area. Now, that doesn't seem so complicated whenever we're sitting and idling in the parking lot. But if you're on the move, it takes your eyes off the road and you have to look at the screen. Second, if you hit a pothole or something comes up and you can't keep your finger on the screen, the whole operation stops. Furthermore, if you get a notification, it stops because it breaks the connection between your finger and the screen in some way. And the worst thing about it is that this screen actually heats up a lot, and I had certain situations where I couldn't put the roof up because it would just hurt my finger. It was that hot. So I would have preferred the old school button, maybe just fit it over here, right, where you have the sunroof button. Usually you don't have a sunroof on this car, and that would have fixed the problem. Maybe on the facelift we'll get that. The instrument cluster does have a couple of dedicated ways of showing the information. So you have Super Sport and Track Pace that are not available on other Mercedes-Benz cars, and then you have the Sport, Classic, Understated, and all the other themes. But I really like this one because it has some sort of fire graphic over there. It looks really good. It's easy to read, and the steering wheel is perfect. We do have touch sensitive buttons on it, which I don't like. I've been saying this for a while. Volkswagen decided to drop them on the new generation cars. I hope Mercedes will come back to physical buttons as well. We have buttons for the ventilated seats, heated seats, memory, and the air scarf system, which is this. Basically on cold days, if you want to take your car for a spin and drop the top, you can actually have hot air coming out of this into the back of your neck to heat you up. I would have actually liked cold air to be done as well, but I'm guessing you would probably be getting meningitis if they did that. Now, in terms of build quality, I think it's okay. The materials could have been a bit better. We do have Alcantara over here on the A-pillars, and I do like this AMG badge over here instead of the usual SRS or airbag badge. I do like the Burmester grill covers. They look really good too. They're made of aluminum and it feels. We have leather all around. I would have configured this car differently if it was mine. I'll say it here, and I've said it before. Black leather on a convertible is never a good idea because you'll be folding your roof down a lot of the times and it will heat up like crazy. We do have ventilated seats, but still you're fighting the sun, so not great. Okay, that said, I think it's about time we take it for a spin. Now I propose we start off in comfort mode because I gotta tell you about the technical side of things a bit and how this car feels whenever you don't push it to the limit. Now, the SL name was first brought out by Mercedes-Benz in the 50s, and nobody could ever forget about the SL Gullwing, for example. Well, fast forward to 2023, and I'm impressed that Mercedes-Benz decided to keep this model alive because sales of convertibles like this haven't been doing great. Everybody seems hell-bent to buy SUVs and crossovers. So the fact that this car even exists is impressive, to say the least. However, this platform will also be used for the Mercedes-Benz, or should I say Mercedes-AMG GT, the new models. And that made it a bit more logical for Mercedes-Benz to invest a hefty amount of money in the development of this platform. So as I said, only AMG models are available for the SL range. So you have the 43, which uses a 2-liter 4-cylinder engine. You have the SL55 with a V8 and this one with a V8 as well. All cars come with all-wheel drive with the 4MATIC Plus all-wheel drive system. And all cars use a 9-speed automatic MCT gearbox, which is basically a Getronic one, but without a torque converter. It uses a wet clutch instead, making it a bit more compact and a bit more responsive and faster shifting compared to the torque converter 9G. And it does feel like it. It's very sharp and very brutal in some places. The 4MATIC system also means that you can send up to 100% of the power to the rear axle. Now on the rear axle you have two multi-plate clutches, and they each are connected to a drive shaft. So basically you can send all of the power to one wheel if you want to, left or right, or the other way around. So you can actually drift with this car even though it does have all-wheel drive. Quite impressive, but you can only do it in the first 3 gears. Now, I've heard a number of reviewers saying that this is a very stiff car, but I don't really see it that way. After all, the SL in the name does come from the German word Sport and Leicht, which basically means sport and light. It's not that easy. Well, this car isn't light anymore. It does tip the scales at around 2 tons. So yeah, it's pretty heavy, but it does have to be a sporty car to some extent. And yes, the suspension is a bit stiff, but it's not unrefined. There's a difference between those things. The dampers actually work really well, and they do soak up the bumps as well as they could. Yes, they have a stiff rebound rate, and they do feel a bit harsher on your back, but I don't think it's that bad. I mean, this is an AMG model after all, so you should expect it to be a bit on the stiffer side of things. Now, as I said, I did have the M3 Touring before this car, and if you've ever driven one, that feels roughly the same as this car. So it is stiff, but it's not unrefined. And to be honest, the difference between sport mode and comfort mode is not that big. But this car does have 48 volt, but this car does have hydraulic anti-roll bars, which should help with the roll in corners. I didn't drive a car without them because I didn't drive the SL55. This car, the SL63, gets them as standard, so I can't really compare. But I'm gonna trust Mercedes-Benz when they say it is more controllable in the bends whenever those anti-roll bars work. What else should I mention? Oh, nothing. Let's get into race mode, see how it drives. Yeah, it's fast. It's really fast. So 0 to 100 kilometers an hour happens in 3.6 seconds. Let's do a launch and see how that looks and feels. Okay, in order to activate launch control on an AMG model, you have to be in race mode, okay? And you have to partially turn off the ESC, the traction control. Now, left foot on the brake all the way down, gas and go. Okay, so I took my foot off the accelerator in 3rd gear, and the car actually shifted into 4th, even though I lifted my foot off the gas. And I noticed that on this transmission, even though it's very responsive in manual mode, and the shifts are very fast, even though that happens, it does have a sort of lag on downshifts. So in certain gears, once you take your foot off the gas, the car doesn't start engine braking immediately. It does have a, I don't know, half a second of still going forward for some reason, still going up in speed. It's quite weird. It's not exactly disturbing, and it doesn't happen all the time, but it's quite a weird feeling when that happens, especially since I am used to the ZF 8-speed 8 HP gearbox that I've driven a lot more often than this 9-speed MCT gearbox. MCT, by the way, comes from multi-clutch transmission. So it's not a double clutch, but a multi-clutch. So yeah, the car is incredibly fast. What I also like about it is the fact that the nose is very light. Even though, unlike the AMG GT, which is a mid-front engine car, which basically means that the engine is all the way in the back of the axle, the front axle, this car doesn't have that layout. It does have the engine slightly over the front axle, but still the nose feels really light. The only problem is you're quite far away from it, so you do feel a bit disconnected from the front end of the car, from the nose of the car. And with this long hood, sometimes you might have an issue knowing what's happening up front, but not when you drive fast. Apart from the fast gear times and the complete control you can have over the gearbox, I also enjoy the stability of the car and the grip. I mean, this car pulls like a freight train in the straight line, and that you would expect, but it also does great in the bend. So as I said, the nose is very eager to turn in, and the rear end just follows. And it has so much grip that it pulls you out of the corner so nicely. So you can actually enjoy this car, and I could see it being tracked every day of the week with no problem. You can actually get carbon ceramic brakes for this car. They're about 9,000 euros, but I would only recommend them if you actually plan on tracking this car. We also have the Michelin Pilot Sport 4S tires on it, which are some of the best you can still get, and they do have great grip once you heat them up a bit. And this car picks up speed at a rate you can't even imagine. Now the top speed is 315 kilometers an hour, which is above what most of its rivals will do. Sure, most of its rivals can have their top speed raised as well, but for some extra money, this one comes as standard with a top speed of 315 kilometers an hour. Not sticking to the rules set by the gentleman's agreement previously laid out by the German manufacturers. So we have what, 100 kilometers an hour. That's nearly 200. So yeah, it's fast. It's really fast. It's quite hard to keep up with it. That said, I hope you guys enjoyed my review of this car. Before we say goodbye to it, let's talk about its rivals and its price tag. So the SL63 is quite expensive. Depending on the market you're in, you're looking at about 200,000 euros. Now for the 43 version, that price starts at about 150 in most markets in Europe. But once you go up to the 55, that's usually about 170, 180, depending on the market, as I said. And this one goes up to about 200. Now, on the Romanian market where I'm filming this video, this car starts at 205,000 euros. And the one you're seeing over here with the optional features added on that I talked about earlier, like the paint, the wheels, the larger wheels, and so on. So the end price tag is €218,000, give or take a couple of hundred. So yeah, it's expensive, and it runs in a very interesting niche because of this price tag. And that niche is including the Porsche 911 Cabrio Turbo or Turbo S. It includes the Bentley Continental GT, it includes the BMW M8 convertible, and to some extent the Aston Martin DBS. Yeah, so it's a very classy segment we're talking about. Would I buy this car in favor of the other ones? Well, it's a tough choice to make. Out of all of the ones I said earlier, I think the M8 has the best bang for the buck ratio. But I do love the design of this car, and I do love its V8. So it's a really tricky decision to make. That's why I'm asking for your help. I want you to tell me in the comment section below which one you would get. Until next time, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to keep this channel alive. Thank you and take care. Don't forget to feed your passions. Ciao.